What's up, everybody? You're back with me, your host, Ian Kane. A huge welcome to this week's second installment of DappRadar Meets. We did another one of these earlier in the week. Maybe some of you caught that. The date today is Wednesday, April 13th. A big hello to everyone, and it's great to see you out there in the audience. Before we dive in, I just want to touch on something that happened. So yesterday, DappRadar tried to do their first community call, and let's not beat around the bush, it was a fail. The reason it was a fail was to do with Discord mainly. We had some server issues, we had problems with people being thrown out, put back in, all sorts of things. So we decided to just call it a day rather than keep messing around. But no matter, we'll dust ourselves on and we'll crack on. What we're going to do is we're going to do that community call tomorrow. So it's Thursday, the 14th of April, 3 p.m. UTC, and it's going to be here on Discord. And fingers crossed, everything will go to plan. If not, we do have a backup in mind over on Twitter Spaces, and we'll have the information ready for that as well, just in case Discord decides to play funny games again. So what is the DappRadar community call? It's just one of the many efforts to improve communication between DappRadar and our community. And at these monthly events, we will present ongoing developments and talk about our plans. In addition, the community call offers users the opportunity to step on the stage and ask the team questions. So again, 14th of April, 3 p.m. UTC here on Discord. We're going to have the head of product, Nick Rennie, chief design officer, Dragos Danica, and the CEO of DappRadar, Skymantas Janauskas. And it's going to be moderated by me. What we're going to discuss, we're going to talk about the unclaimed radar tokens and what we should do with them. That's up for vote. We're going to talk about product updates, including more pro features and our forthcoming mobile application. And we're going to introduce everybody to DappRadar bounties. So like I said, what we do is we speak through each subject matter, and then we ask you to jump in and you can ask all sorts of questions. So yeah, again, tomorrow, Thursday, April 14th, 3 p.m. UTC here on Discord. We'll also be giving out some popes at the end of that event tomorrow for those that get involved. Arguably one of the coolest popes you can get from DappRadar, as it shows that you're actually participating in our future. So yeah, make sure you get involved tomorrow. Come and ask some questions. Give us all a difficult time. That's why we're there. So let's get on to the main event for today. Today, I'm really excited to welcome Smit Vachami. He's from the Optimism Network. I'm just going to do a quick sound check. Do we have you there, Smit?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Whoa! Sure. Awesome. Yep. Awesome. I was really scared then that Discord was going to play games with me today, but it looks like we're doing all right. Okay, Schmidt, give me a minute. I'm just going to run through some small bits and then we'll jump in, okay?
Perfect. Sounds good.
Cool, man. So as always, we record these sessions for people to catch up later. If you missed any of the previous shows, you can get them all on YouTube. Just head over to our channel, just search DappRadar, and you'll find hundreds of educational analytical videos to help you along your journey. And remember, the reason for these calls is for you guys to ask questions. If you have any questions for Smit, please feel free to throw them up on the stage. Throw them at me, or I will invite you up onto the stage if you put your hand up, and you can come and ask him yourself. So use this opportunity to ask those all-important questions. Make sure you listen out for other people's questions. No such thing as a stupid question, only if it's asked 5 times. So let's get right into it. I just want to get everybody on the same page with what optimism is, but I'm going to let Smit do that this week rather than me stealing the thunder. So Smit, what we usually do at the beginning is an elevator pitch. So what I'll ask you to do is pretend you're trapped with me in an elevator. I know, I'm sorry. And we're in there for like a minute, and you're going to tell me all about optimism and why I should be paying attention in a very fast amount of time.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm excited to be here. But if I had to give you guys an elevator pitch on optimism, I would probably say something along the lines of optimism's a layer 2 scaling solution for Ethereum. So if we had to break it down into a sentence, it's based on a specific type of technology called an optimistic rollup. And the beauty of utilizing a rollup rather than an alternative layer 1 ecosystem or a sidechain is that it'll inherit the security of Ethereum. So there's a ton of technical thoughts relating to fraud proofs and how it achieves this, but the gist of it would be related to this. And yeah, I think that's where I'll kind of leave it for the elevator pitch, and then we can go into the details later.
Yeah, man. I just want to put this out there early doors as well. It's not that it's a complex project or a complex idea. It's just there's a lot of words that we might use that some of you may not have heard before. So we're going to endeavor to kind of break it down. And I hope you'll join me in that, Smith, as well. I'll be playing devil's advocate here and asking some pretty stupid questions. But let's give people the kind of ground level info, I think, first, and then work up towards the deeper level stuff, I think. So first of all, in the elevator, you've mentioned a couple of things, and if I didn't know, I'd be thinking, all right, cool. So you're a layer two scaling solution. Let's start right at the beginning. Tell us the difference between layer one and layer two, Smith.
Yeah, so a layer one would be like its own individual blockchain, right? So that would be something like Ethereum, it would be something like Avalanche. Um, and the beauty of a layer one blockchain is that it has its own consensus mechanism. So they run a ton of nodes that do its own consensus, and they have their own little like scheme for how they use gas and all these little things. And a layer two is basically built on top of that to make it more efficient. Um, so yeah, for us, we are a layer two built on top of Ethereum. So we're trying to scale the Ethereum blockchain. We're not trying to kind of replace it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So it's a scaling solution for the current blockchains that are out there. So as we're saying, it's not like a competitor as such. It's a kind of add-on and a solution to scale Ethereum. So the way and the next question I'm going to go into, and I'm sure you probably guessed, is the idea of a rollup. So a rollup for me is like a fancy way of describing a blockchain that piggybacks off another parent blockchain for security mainly. Is that about right? Is that like the kind of basic idea of it?
Yeah, I think that's a really good basic idea for it for sure. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So the idea is that, yeah, Optimism is piggybacking off Ethereum. Ethereum is considered the most secure and is the biggest network by value out there. It had the first mover advantage, and it's the one that most people know about. So a lot of dApps operating over on Ethereum that can now also operate on Optimism as well. So let's go. So we got those two like basic things out the way, and I think it's quite important to get them out the way really early. But now let's talk about you, man. So can you tell us a bit about yourself and your background and how you've ended up over at Optimism doing what you do?
Yeah, definitely. So I am a front-end engineer and leading that charge at Optimism by trade. So I've worked on the front-facing apps that users use, like the bridge, and I've just recently started to pivot roles to focusing on DeFi growth and helping lead the charge around driving crypto native growth at the company.
Okay.
I got my start in crypto many years ago when I was in high school. I used Bitcoin as a means to buy RuneScape Gold, which was like a game that was popular at the time. Then I
Mm,
arrived to college, and my drive for crypto kind of shifted to the investing side. So
yeah,
that's like sort of why the pivot towards crypto native growth rather than just engineering came from.
sure. Okay, cool, man. And how about the team over at Optimism? Can you tell us a little bit about them and like the kind of ethos behind the like what kind of gets them out of bed in the morning, what gets you out of bed, and what is it you're working towards?
Yeah, I think the team is actually like one of the biggest reasons why I joined. They have some of the smartest individuals, obviously. EIP 1559 co-authors. We have we have people from the Ethereum Foundation that have been there for a very long time, and a lot of them are driven by the right value system, which makes it a lot easier to work there, obviously. So they're looking at a grander vision. They don't want to just make money or build things that are going to provide just little bits of yield. They want to create something a lot larger. And because of that, they've created this environment where everyone is super motivated to try to achieve this larger goal and vision that they have.
Okay. Do you want to touch a little bit on this sort of larger goal and vision? Like, is it to be the overriding kind of blockchain of choice for DeFi? Is it for gaming? Like, what's or is it, or it doesn't matter?
Yeah, I guess like it depends on really what the people want. So we're very flexible in molding into what the people and users of the space want. So if that is initially going to be related to DeFi, a lot of our efforts are going to go into DeFi. If it's related to gaming, it's going to be related to gaming. The larger vision comes from the fact that like Optimism's trying to create a general better society in this space that's actually permissionless, actually decentralized, motivated by the right value system like public goods. So
Yep.
there are apps like Hardhat or Truffle that don't get real support, but are very, very, very huge pieces of driving the network and driving usage and driving dApps. So we've been focusing a lot on making sure that those little pieces do get the sort of assistance and support that they need to succeed because it's going to be here for a very long time. So, um, yeah, it's a bit of like everything, but yeah, we're definitely looking to create something a lot larger than just being like a single purpose blockchain.
Sure, sure. Okay, cool. So let's go into the deeper side of the tech a little bit. And can you tell us about optimism and just basically what it is? Like, why does it exist? What does it do? And how does it do that?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. So if you look at optimism, the way that I look at it is that it's a general purpose layer 2 technology. So that means that you can build any types of dApps on Optimism that you would build on Ethereum. It's not like StarkX or another application specific type of blockchain. It is
Mhm.
general purpose. So that's the first thing that I'll say. Um, Another thing that I'll mention is that it's based on rollup technology, like I mentioned. So a rollup is something that performs the execution of a transaction outside of layer one, and the data is posted back to layer one where consensus is reached. So in this way, you inherit the security of Ethereum. So you'll see that Ethereum's TVL is like super, super high still, obviously, even though there are very cheap solutions out there. A lot of that comes from the fact that people trust Ethereum. It's completely decentralized and they trust the consensus mechanism to handle their funds. And we want to inherit a lot of that security so people feel comfortable utilizing Ethereum in a much cheaper state. So yeah, the technology is basically built to do something like that. And that's the way that we achieve it through the rollup technology.
Okay, cool. So it's basically people who are using dApps out there, for example, they could be using Uniswap or something similar for trading. Now they're incurring pretty high gas fees and have been doing for quite some time, right? And do you want to talk like some people obviously I kind of know why that is, but do you want to just explain to people why Ethereum is suffering so badly? I mean, it is kind of suffering from its own success, if that's kind of the basics of it. But why has this popped up? Why has it come around that Ethereum is so clogged up and the need for things like optimism has arisen?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I guess if you had looked at Ethereum like many, many like years ago, it wouldn't have had this problem for sure. But as time went on, more dApps are built on top of Ethereum. A lot more transactions were happening on the network,
Yeah.
which started to clog the network. And essentially, like every single transaction takes gas, as you guys know. And as the price of Ethereum goes up and as gas fees go up and more transactions come through, the Ethereum network can't handle that sort of throughput right now, which is why optimistic rollups are created in the first place. They're created so that you could handle a certain amount of throughput so that the load could be kind of balanced a bit better. And
Yeah.
as time goes on with like the ETH 2.0 merge and um, yeah, just like some of the Ethereum 2.0 roadmap, we'll be able to scale even further with the beacon chain and whatnot and sharding so that we can basically get an unlimited amount of throughput almost so that the gas fees could be handled better and there would be a lot less network congestion.
Nice. So traders and people who are using dApps could be a non would have much less friction when interacting because, as we know, a lot of people do gravitate to Ethereum when they first enter the blockchain or start to do some trading or using any decentralized exchanges. But I guess what we're trying to say here is that that's not the case anymore. You don't need to go down that road straight away. So we've spoken about roll-ups, and I think we kind of said what they are, and it is just terminology there. But let's break it down a little bit more as well. And can you explain roll-ups? Like, let's try and do it in human language. Like, we know that it's taking the workload off Ethereum, but let's just dive into some of the tech a little bit and how it actually achieves that.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, it specifically takes the load off of Ethereum by doing the heavy computation that you would normally do on the Ethereum blockchain outside. And it does that heavy computation and then it just posts back data back to Ethereum layer one. And it just gives it kind of like the computed data that is just easy to use. So it's almost like a state transition so that you don't have to do like heavy stuff on chain. Um, and this is sort of how like both rollups work, whether that's an optimistic rollup or a zero knowledge rollup. So
Mhm.
yeah, essentially that's kind of like what it does. It takes away like the hard part of like what actually costs a lot of money on Ethereum and does it somewhere else and posts back the data.
Cool. And some people out there ask me sometimes as well, like, are Ethereum cool about all of this layer two, and like, how do they feel about this? And I always kind of say, well, I think it's just evolution, and Ethereum would be thrilled that that people can still perform actions and that they're considered the top down, the kind of top of the pile. I mean, what do you think about this? Do you think Ethereum will reign for a long time to come, and that sort of solutions as yourself will just become complementary?
Yeah. I mean, I think like Ethereum itself has built a huge network effect, and for us, like um, we definitely don't want it to. We wanted to inherit a lot of like user base, the sort of developers that they had. Um, I definitely think Ethereum is going to be here for a long time because it's one of those ecosystems that sort of created its network effect without bootstrapping VC capital,
Yeah.
which to me is a very important one, right? So it makes it seem a lot more authentic, and a lot of the people here are very loyal. And harnessing that loyal community and making sure that we can cater towards them is super important rather than just creating an alternative service like a layer one and trying to create a new community on its own.
Yeah.
So it's that's sort of what our focus is, right? So we want to be very Ethereum aligned, Ethereum adjacent, and sort of give them the ability to scale when that's probably their biggest issue right now, right? Where like they have a ton of users that are loyal that want to continue to use Ethereum,
Yeah.
but the scaling environment is just terrible. So that's sort of where we come in.
All right, cool. So, like as we said at the beginning, it's not a competition as such. It's more about complementing, I think, definitely. So, what makes so there are other layer two solutions available, quite a lot actually. And I guess most of the time it's judged on TVL, which is one thing to judge on. But what kind of makes Optimism unique from other layer twos out there right now that are being spoken about?
Yeah, I think this is a great question, and there's a ton of ways to answer it. The way that I'll answer it right now is the first thing is that Optimism is a developer first type of product. So yes, we cater towards users from a growth perspective, but the technology is a gold mine for an Ethereum developer. So we've worked very hard to make the engine super EVM equivalent, which is almost one to one with what you would do on Ethereum, whether
Okay.
that's the developer tools, the technology. And the reason that we really worked on this idea was the founders originally started working in crypto a long time ago. They started working at this place called Plasma Group, which is supposed to do something similar, create
Yeah,
a
yeah.
scaling solution that's supposed to create an absurd amount of transaction throughput and push forward the scale of Ethereum. But when they released it, they found that people weren't interested as much. And this is because developers didn't want to build on something completely new. And they
Right.
were willing to give up a bit of scale for that as well, as long as the experience was good. So, yeah, that was a great learning experience for them. And for us, yeah, DevX is super important. So that's what keeps us a bit more unique. Where if you're a developer on Ethereum, you can easily become a developer on Optimism because it's absolutely one to one. So I think that's the first thing that makes us a bit more unique.
Yeah.
We really honed in on that. Obviously, like we are a very technology focused group, so we have a ton of researchers that are on the forefront of like developing EIPs to reduce gas costs, make the technology a lot more refined. Um, so I think those are two of the ones that are from like the tech perspective that
Yeah.
make us a bit more unique over other rollups.
Cool. I think yeah, competition's pretty hot out there right now, but interesting at the beginning. So with Plasma, as you said, the reaction was not what you guys expected. Can you go into that a bit more? Like, did they was it like just a huge shock that people weren't kind of keen on this, or that devs didn't want to hop into a new language, or did you see that coming, or did you think, this is new technology? I mean, you yourself are a developer. What's your kind of preference? What was it that you learned first?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely. So this happened like about in I think it was about 2019.
Mhm.
It's definitely not something that people expected, since they obviously spent a lot of their time
Yeah,
researching and making sure that they could figure it out. But in retrospect, it makes sense, right? Like if you're a developer, you don't want to learn a new coding language, you don't want to learn new developer tools. So if you're someone that like is trying to make either a amazing product in the space or I don't know, make some money off of something in this space, you're not going to learn an entirely new technology stack. You're just
yeah.
going to go to something that already has it. So that in retrospect, it was kind of obvious, I'd say.
Yeah, no, I can see, but I can also see how you can, yeah, in retro is a beautiful thing, right? To be able to hindsight to look back is great. But yeah, it kind of makes sense. But another sort of random question there. How about like it makes sense to me that if you're writing in the same language that you're going to want to come across and do that on another network and not have too much friction there. How about these? There's a lot of talk at the moment about like Web 2 devs making the jump over into Web 3. I mean, I don't know how familiar you are with that, or if you have any friends in that kind of
Mhm.
realm at the moment, but what do they think? Like if you do, because I've spoken to a few and it's a mixed reaction. It's like, well, I'm starting from the beginning anyway, so I may as well just go with what's hot. But yeah, what do you think about that? Like, do you think Optimism provides a nice foundation for people to jump in from Web 2?
Yeah, I think optimism is essentially like the gold mine for any Ethereum dev, but everybody that's coming from Web 2 is a bit more open in what they want to use and what they can use. But I will say that a lot of them do want to still use Solidity.
Yeah,
So if you're a Web 2 developer, you're not going to just jump to Solana because it has some of the coolest stuff coming out. You have to learn Rust, which is a very tough language. I don't know if anybody here has used it. But Solidity is a lot more straightforward. It's been around for a long time for specifically smart contract development. For years now, it's battle tested, it's upgraded a lot. So I think a lot of Web2 developers do want to learn Solidity rather than learning any other coding languages.
makes a lot of sense, right? Like, yeah, absolutely. And I think in the end, there might be multiple languages right now, but they'll all be sort of filtered out and we'll have our winners within the next kind of 5 to 10 years, right? It can't, we can't have a situation where there's 100 different languages and different groups writing in those languages. It would be crazy. Let's talk about the dApps on Optimism a little bit. Obviously, with DappRadar, that's what we do. We track your. So Optimism was integrated into the DappRadar tracking a couple of weeks ago now. So in front of me, I've got, I think it's around 40 odd dApps here that we're listing. 29 dApps in total that we have. That's not all the dApps that are on Optimism. Some of the real standout ones. I mean, I mentioned Uniswap earlier, and you've got Uniswap. Uniswap are running over on Optimism. So, and they're a pretty big player. So let's talk about that a little bit. Like, how does Uniswap tap into the optimism layer, and how is that more beneficial for traders?
Yeah, Swap actually onboarded onto Optimism a very long time ago, a couple years ago, and the Optimism team built this thing called the Unipeg experiment at a hackathon and pitched it to the Uniswap team. They decided that they wanted to build on top of Optimism and sort of help us grow back then. And if you're a person that's using Uniswap on Ethereum mainnet right now,
Mhm.
you're probably paying killer gas fees, obviously.
Yeah,
But for us, you're probably trading for less than $1. And as soon as liquidity mining comes out on Optimism via Uniswap, you'll see a lot more liquidity hop into Optimism via liquidity mining as well. So that's going to help out a lot for the user experience to sort of start driving usage on alternative layers where gas fees are cheaper. So yeah, I think that's how I feel about Uniswap at least. I can talk about other apps if you want as well,
yeah,
but
sure, man. Let's go in a look because I know synthetics is a very important one for you guys as well, and there's others as well. But yeah, as we said at the beginning, it's mostly DeFi and exchange dApps at the moment, but a few other things popping around at the moment. So yeah, man, go for gold. Let's. I think it's quite cool that Uniswap's operating there, and as you said, once liquidity starts to improve and traders can hop over, the whole thing feels quite a bit of a no-brainer, really, to me, Smith. If I'm honest, it would be a bit.
yeah,
It would be pretty
exactly.
silly to hang out over on Ethereum and pay $50 to transfer some assets around, right? Do you have a? Is there
Exactly.
a hard date on that at all that you can share, or is that just something that's in the pipeline?
Yeah, the Uniswap liquidity mining program actually just passed its proposal over governance, so shouldn't be too long. They're still figuring out a couple of things. They're launching on us and a couple others at the same time, so they want to do something more encompassing.
Got it.
But yeah, it shouldn't be too far away. I would say within like the next month or two. That's
Nice.
probably what my guess would be. Um, yeah, I think like I agree with you. It's a no-brainer to move over to
Hmm.
Optimism or any other layer twos because you're not going to pay $50 of gas for a transaction that you can do on another layer that is essentially one-to-one when it
Yeah.
comes to security, decentralization, and whatnot. So I think there was like a famous figure in crypto. His name is Suzu. He said that if you don't have about $1 million in crypto, you're probably going to get burned out if you're just trading on Ethereum mainnet the entire year.
Yeah.
So just off a gas phase. So yeah, our ecosystem is still in its infancy. We have about $500 million in TVL.
Yeah.
It's growing very quickly right now, and a lot of the focus is revolved around derivatives, since this is a niche market that does have a ton of potential. So you'll see synthetics, like you mentioned, is one of our biggest apps. It's been there since the beginning. Perpetual protocol is a super cool one that is doing really well right now. I'm a fan of them. They're essentially similar. They're a perpetual swaps trading product, and I'm happy to see that there's a DApp like them that really feels like a good, not only DYDX competitor, but a DApp that can compete with centralized services like FTX, Bybit, Binance. So a lot of our usage does come from their product at the moment. So
Nice.
I see them growing a lot more as liquidity comes in and they launch some of their cool features that are coming out. On the other side, we're investing a ton of time in getting the basic money Legos to bootstrap on our ecosystem. So
Yeah.
we have Aave, we have Curve, we're working to get Yearn, Compound, other yield aggregators. So those are probably the current projects that are doing well or will do soon. And then there's obviously the other sector of dApps and ideas that I'm more excited about, which we can get to later as well.
Yeah, cool, man. I mean, yeah, I'm just kind of scanning through the ranks here, and is it having dApps that jump over from networks like Ethereum and other platforms where they already have a user base, like Uniswap, for example? In regards to the total value locked on Optimism, is having native dApps more useful than kind of onboarding dApps that are already operational? Does that question make sense? I may have confused myself
Yeah,
a little
no,
bit.
no, absolutely. I think it's a great question. If Optimism native projects are more useful or
Yeah.
beneficial to the ecosystem,
Mm.
yeah, it really depends. In a lot of cases, we don't want to limit dApp teams to be Optimism native because it's a way of limiting their growth as well sometimes. But in a lot of other cases, it does make sense. So, for example, like a lending product like Aave is not going to be bound to one chain or
Yeah.
ecosystem. They're just a product that's supposed to be everywhere, since that's how they grow the most. But a product like Perpetual Protocol actually does benefit us a lot if they're Optimism native, right? Since they're like a high transaction throughput type of DApp,
Yep.
and every single time they transact, that's fees for the Optimism ecosystem to inherit. So yeah, as long as we're a settlement layer for those type of apps, they can kind of operate anywhere. But yeah, more fees obviously means more growth for the Optimism ecosystem.
Yeah.
So yeah, that could mean in the form of liquidity, right? If like Aave has the most liquidity on Optimism,
Yeah.
we probably get the most usage on them anyways, so they don't have to be OP native. But yeah, they definitely can be, and it would probably just help this ecosystem over others more.
Yeah, that's it. Like you said, the Legos that have to be like we obviously we see networks emerge, and some of the most important things that they have natively are usually a DEX, an NFT marketplace, a lending protocol to kind of tick all those boxes in order to climb that TVL rank, as it were. So I think that's what led me to that question. I keep seeing, for example, like Tofu NFT. I think they operate on about 25 different networks. And it just confuses me sometimes about how they're sort of counting what where. It's quite difficult.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? Like it's quite difficult to keep track of and like Seller network as well, operational across I think 15 networks, including Optimism.
yeah,
So it gets a little bit confusing, I think. And I think for the users as well, perhaps in the future, I'm kind of the thought that these things I like no disrespect to any network out there, but I think the end goal here is the user just has a nice silky experience, right? And doesn't think too much about these things. Because let's be real, like when you take money out of a cash machine, like most people don't know how that works, right? And I think if we're going to go mainstream, people shouldn't really be concerning themselves with these things, just that everything works correctly, it's pretty cheap, and that it's fast. And that's kind of the whole crux of optimism, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we want to make sure that we abstract that layer long term. Like I said, like the 50-year vision is to definitely be something similar to what you're saying right now.
Mhm.
I think one thing I will say is that we want to make sure that it's safe and secure, right? So we don't want your money to get stolen. We want it to work in a very permissionless way. And that's an important differentiation that I'd like to make since
Yeah.
obviously we don't have like 1 cent transactions or a fraction of a cent transactions, but it comes from the fact that we are giving you guys the security. And for a lot of people, that is something that they would pay a premium for.
Yeah.
And long term, obviously, the transaction fees will be reduced um, quite a bit, like 100x, even more so. But at the moment, we're definitely like trying to provide the security once again that people love over at Ethereum.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really important point, and almost as well, like doing things on Ethereum or being part of the Ethereum ecosystem is a bit of a flex, right? Like you see these NFT collections launching on Ethereum the whole time, despite the fact that the gas fee is going to be pretty big and it gets transferred over to the user. They don't seem to care about that too much. It's more of a kind of puffing out your chest kind of move, like, yes, we're on Ethereum. So yeah, I still see that as a definite thing, but I think it's fading. I think it's fading. Just touching on
Yeah.
NFTs there a little bit. I don't know how much you are into this whole on NFT market game, but I see optimistic apes here on Optimism. Do you know much? Do you want to talk about that a little bit? I mean, that looks pretty cool, man.
Yeah, so we're obviously actively like building our NFT ecosystem.
Hmm.
So we kind of started with OptiPunks, sort of had like a derivative project there, made optimistic bunnies, and slowly we're just adding in more and more collections onto the Optimism ecosystem. Um, and yeah, we're definitely trying to push towards more artists, sourcing more of these people, hiring for those categories to
Yeah,
source better, high quality NFT projects as well,
nice.
and catering towards the NFT community that exists today, right? So, like I mentioned, your gas fees are super important, even to NFT traders.
Yep.
And it's important that you're on Ethereum because if you have an NFT on Solana or somewhere else, technically you don't fully own the NFT
Mhm.
because it's not decentralized. So
Yep.
it's not permissionless. So the ownership of the NFT is for yourself.
Yeah.
Plus, if Solana's nodes go down, right, something like that. Um,
That would never happen, though,
so
right? That would never happen.
yeah, no comment.
No, I see what you're saying there. That's really interesting. I don't think a lot of people know that that actually that is the case. So how does that work with Optimism? If the collection is on Optimism, if for example I get myself at one of these apes, is it do I own that or is it explain that a little bit for us?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So like the NFTs in general are similar to like how you would own it on any other ecosystem.
Uh-huh.
So if you have MetaMask connected to the Optimism Ethereum network and you bought a NFT, it would exist on that network, similar to how you would do it on any other network as well. Um, yeah, and I think the difference is for us is once again, right? Like if you're owning it on Ethereum or slash optimistic Ethereum,
Yeah.
it's pretty much one to one. Since the goal is for your art piece and like that value accrual to come from the fact that it's decentralized, it's good art, and it's truly your own and it's your ownership. And yeah, so it's pretty much one to one with how you would own it on Ethereum.
Okay, that makes sense. That's cool. And one of the categories that's kind of missing for me, well, not missing, sorry, backtrack, is not big at the moment on Optimism. Is a category that we are seeing really drive unique active wallets into Dapps right now in terms of volume. Like 50%, over 50% of all active users of Dapps in quarter one this year were for gaming Dapps. Now, how do you feel about this kind of GameFi movement and the gamification of DeFi? And secondly, do you think it's something that, I guess it's to do with the kind of outreach of Optimism and how you go about selecting dApps, or do you just, is it a free for all? Like, can we talk about that a little bit? First of all, like the gaming side, do you think it's something that Optimism wants to embrace, or do you see it as more of a fad, or you'd rather keep yourselves in the real DeFi sector?
Yeah, I think gaming is definitely something that I personally believe strongly in. Like I said, my introduction to crypto was through gaming
Yeah, yeah.
back in the day. So, yeah, I'm a huge fan of NFT gaming and just gaming and crypto in general, as long as the games are high quality. And I think that is the differentiation. Like, you don't want to just create an NFT game that just makes people money and then just gets washed away.
Yeah.
You want to create something a bit more sustainable where the quality of the game is what's the core. So for us, we obviously have a ton of partners like A16Z,
Hmm.
Paradigm as part of our raise, and they have like some of the biggest and most prolific gaming rounds and gaming companies under their umbrella.
Yeah.
So we definitely want to leverage some of that ability to kind of like pave our path in the gaming space and the NFT space as well. So yeah, definitely super excited about that space and see how it grows. And I don't think it's a fad from a
No.
personal perspective. I think it's here to stay.
Nice. So we're in agreement there. No, that's cool. I didn't think of that actually, the connection between your investors and the companies that are also invested in. So it's, I get the vibe here. It's kind of a slow, not slow and steady, well, yeah, slow and steady, but a very measured approach by Optimism rather than just allowing any old DApp to throw their smart contracts out on the network. Like and how does that work? Like in terms of DApp developers wanting to work with Optimism, is there a way that you guys kind of work with teams? Do you offer finance, or can you offer more than that? Can you offer marketing and like operational support for all the devs out there thinking about Optimism? Like what kind of pack do you offer anything to them?
Yeah. So if you're a developer or if you're somebody that wants to even get into developing, um, we're super straightforward. I'd say like the overhead of knowledge that you need to have is very low. And if you can look through the docs over at Ethereum or even our docs, it'll be super easy and straightforward to build. So I'll say that first.
Okay.
If there's support needed, we have a very, very active Discord community. So that's kind of where like the first line of support comes from.
Mhm.
And recently, we've just created a process to actually do exactly what you're saying, which is help teams get the support that they need, whether it's from a technical perspective, a marketing perspective, or a grants perspective. So all of it's being worked on.
Nice.
Um, so we're definitely open, and we understand, like as a engineering first company, we understand like the beauty of tech being first, and understand operational costs of running things on chain, whether it's nodes,
Yeah.
hosting. So yeah, definitely don't feel shy about building on Optimism. Um, there's a lot of support to be given.
That's really cool. I think it's important to mention as well that like a lot of the time you see a lot of financial support packages being thrown around. Oh, X amount for your DApp. But I think it's more than that is needed, like you say as well, correctly, that marketing, that engineering, that tech support is all part of the same parcel, right? And without one, the other doesn't mean much. Like you can have the coolest game in the world or the coolest DeFi DApp, but if nobody knows about it, no one's going to use it. So it's quite an interesting one to think about, but cool. I'll get you to shout out later where those people should head to have a look for some information about things like that. That would be really good. So looking at I mean, one thing about Optimism that I read, and I just want to double check this with you, it's a public benefit corp, right? And it's open source code base that's already been forked a couple of times. Is that right? And if so, who's the fork? Who are the forks? Because I read popular forks and I thought, right, who then?
Yeah, it definitely has been forked multiple times already. And that's just a testament to show that the technology is great. It's working, and a lot of people do want to spend millions and millions of dollars to create a fork, build on top of it, and hire an entire dev group. So uh, there's a couple of them. One of them is Metis, which is actually created by, I believe, Vitalik's mom. Um,
What?
she, yeah. So they created the fork on top of Optimism. There's another one called Boba Network, which recently, I believe, raised $50 million as well for using our code base as well.
No.
So yeah, two really big forks just coming out of the Optimism code base. And I believe there's another one called Nami that's building currently as well. And they're just sort of getting started still. But
Nice.
yeah, if you go to L2B, there's like a category now where it'll like have the OP tag right next to some of the projects.
Yeah.
And it'll basically tell you whether or not it's based on Optimism's code base. And so many people have started to fork us.
Yeah. Well, I did wonder. Like, again, it seems like a bit of a no-brainer in that category. So I'm still sitting here thinking about Vitalik's mom. That's just blown my mind a little bit. I'm gonna have to research that, and maybe try and get her on the show. Um, so we talked about the backing as well because you recently just had a raise, right, through Paradigm and Andreessen Horowitz. And what are the plans for this? Like, any specific plans given the nature of this raise and who it's from? I mean, we touched on the gaming network a little bit, but what's the bigger picture for 2022 and now this raise has happened?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think our roadmap and the raise is related to our roadmap as well, but we wanted to raise a certain amount of money because we do know the optics of raising money in crypto is a little bit negative,
Mhm.
but we wanted to run essentially forever so that we'd never have to worry about money when it comes to building or creating our ecosystem ever again.
Yeah.
So yeah, we raised $150 million so that the current people at Optimism could obviously stay. And there are a bunch of smart people there that could definitely be successful elsewhere. And we also raise money so that like we can ramp up on the growth part of it as well. So our plan from a growth perspective is to ramp up integrations heavily. Hence, there's like a huge go-to-market focus. So we have a ton of different hiring happening for the go-to-market team. And yeah, like I think the raise is definitely like very key to making sure that this comes to light and happens effectively. So that's from like the money perspective. And then on the other side, we have a specific type of strategic investor, right? So we have Andreessen Horowitz, Paradigm, and a ton of others as well, little people and angels.
Yeah.
And we did it this way because we wanted to make sure that like one, we gave back to the community. So we didn't want to just have all of the money go to or come from Paradigm. We wanted to definitely distribute it a bit more. Um, and because of that, we've sort of created a better network, I'd say, of having people bought in, right? And
Yeah.
I think that helps us a bit more too. So yeah, helping these guys will definitely be helping us a lot more in the future. And a ton of the advice that they give us is super crucial for success and growth, since at the end of the day, they've been in the space the longest and they've been able to create many successful ventures in the past. So excited to work with them.
I think people forget about that sometimes as well. Like it's not just about the money, it's about who comes with that money, right? Like we see that often that you're tapping into knowledge base and a wealth of connections. So that's super important for anybody or any company that's trying to grow, right? I mean, in regards to TVL, because unfortunately it is the metric that you guys will be judged by, given that you're pretty DeFi heavy right now. So you're sitting in an area alongside sort of CeeLo, Thorchain, Hiko, and Moonriver. So is there any kind of plans to sling? I think that puts you 23rd in the top 100 right now. Any plans to kind of try and slingshot past these guys? I mean, we spoke about DeFi, we spoke about lending and the increasing amount of liquidity, but any other kind of things out there on the table that you're looking at to kind of get this pumping a little bit more and start climbing past and into the top 10?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's a great question. I think a lot of people want to know what our plan to grow
Yeah.
is. And I think the way that I see it is we're trying to build a moat. So we want to make sure we build dApps and services that are all actually going to create huge network effects, right? So I think that's sort of where it starts. And we want these dApps to be based on a sustainable model. So not just like incentives, but their fees generate enough revenue for them to be able to run long term.
Yeah. Okay.
So we want sustainable growth for them. We want sticky liquidity for them, and not mercenary capital. And we've learned a lot from our competitors um,
Yeah.
to do this properly. Right? It's a problem that's being solved by a ton of different ecosystems at the moment. And like I said, I think for us, I guess like the next couple months will be super telling. So definitely come check us out during that time.
Yeah.
We're going to be partnering heavy with a lot of large figureheads and dApps to help our ecosystem grow. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing, right? Like we're a ecosystem in its infancy,
Yeah.
and yeah, we may be sitting alongside some of the ones that you mentioned, but we haven't been around for that long.
No.
So as soon as like we start really focusing on growth, I definitely see like the top end thing is like obviously like a goal, but yeah, we're thinking about something way further than that, obviously.
Yeah,
So
I think
yeah, super excited.
it's a bit of a vanity metric, isn't it? I believe TVL. It's an important metric, but it can also be a bit of a vanity metric as well. Like you say, you've not been around as long as those guys, which is why I mention it actually in a positive way that within that short time frame you've jumped up and you're kind of competing with these guys. I mean, talking about competition a little bit, and in terms of customer like user retention, like it's something that we don't speak about too often, but it at the moment it feels like there's a big rush. You're trying to get users in, we're trying to get them involved, but the retention side of it seems to be lacking a little bit, like you rightly pointed out. This kind of floods in with liquidity, people buy into the token, and then the whole thing is unsustainable, so it falls to pieces. How do you think you can keep a competitive edge here as well, and retain users where there's so much competition around, especially this year as well?
Exactly. I think this is a super good question. If you're a DeFi degen, you've definitely kind of been on the other side of
Mm.
this, like I am as well, where I'll hop from ecosystem to ecosystem from a personal point of view to collect yield,
Yeah.
to use products on every other ecosystem, to find an edge, and just kind of go where like the money's rushing in. But you'll realize very quickly that money leaves just as quickly as money comes in.
Yeah.
And it's not healthy for the ecosystem if it does that. So you need to always constantly build and do cool things. I think there's a lot of cool primitives coming out in DeFi in general,
Yeah.
like VE tokenomics, some of the stuff that the Solidly experiment kind of did to help bootstrap liquidity and keep it more sticky.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of new concepts like protocol and liquidity that are being iterated on top of, and I'm excited to see how that pans out. And experiments like Solidly are a telling point for this. So we recently made an announcement to launch with the VDAO team to build a Solidly fork on Optimism. And I'm super excited about this as well because it does help solve that problem as well, which is bringing sustainable liquidity to Optimism and any sort of dApps that need it. And it birthed from the idea that like if you're really into the ecosystem, you'll know that like if you need stablecoin liquidity, it's very tough, right? And what dApps do is they'll accumulate a convex position so that they can vote on the pools to get more stablecoin rewards.
Yes.
But this is also not a sustainable model because it requires you investing millions and millions of dollars worth of money into CVX, which for some people is doable, but for some people it's not, right? Like the Terra ecosystem does have a huge CVX position, but
Yeah.
other dApps may not be able to do that. And because of that, they have to partner with projects like Terra or
Yeah.
Frax to help bring stablecoin liquidity, but it's usually not the best solution. So yeah, I'm excited to see some of this iteration of tokenomics to create sustainable growth for protocols. And yeah, that's why I'm super excited about that specific launch.
That kind of what you're touching on there with Terra and the CRX, and yeah, it's an interesting topic right now, isn't it? They're trying to choke DAI out of the liquidity pool, and it's all getting a little bit nasty. Like, what do they call it? The curve wars. It's all getting a bit an industry that seemed to be heavily collaborative for a long time now seems to be sort of turning on one another because the going's got a little bit tough, right? So it is going to be an interesting year, I think, in that
Exactly.
regard, definitely. What was the next question I had? I wanted to ask you actually, because I saw another figure floating around about gas. We spoke about gas fees earlier. So what's the kind of average gas fee using an Optimism dApps? Like what should people expect to see there if I want to swap some tokens? Let's keep it simple.
Yeah, if you wanted to swap some tokens, you're probably paying around $1, I'd say, on average. And this fluctuates obviously with the load of Ethereum. So if Ethereum network is super congested, then yeah, our gas fees will go up. But if it's super low, then it'll go down. So It averages around like maybe $1.
Okay, that's pretty good when I think about what I'm paying on ETH, definitely. So maybe, and I saw a number like how you must have saved people a lot of money in gas already, right? Like there must be a large amount. So this must be a bit of a marketing a line, I would think. I can't remember what the number was. I want to say 50 billion, but I think I've gone a bit overboard there. 50 million, maybe.
No, I think recently we posted around something on Twitter. I'm not sure exactly when it was, but a couple of weeks ago we posted that we had saved $1 billion
Yeah,
for our
that's
users.
it.
And yeah, I think that's related to like obviously like the gas fees. I think the figure is less important. What's more important is that the gas fees are for specifically Ethereum adjacent users,
Yeah.
right? So like if you're on Polygon or if you're on AVAX and you're claiming to have saved $1 billion in gas fees, it's actually a little bit misleading, right? Because
Yeah.
it's a completely different ecosystem. You're paying with different gas. You have your own consensus mechanisms. It's not the same
Yeah, that's
thing.
a good point,
So
actually. It's a good point.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you're saving Ethereum level gas. Like we actually pay for gas in ETH as well. So it's a bit different.
Got it. Got it. No, that's a really good point, actually. Like those comparisons, but it's the way that data gets played with, right, Smith? Like it's still a very sensationalist kind of industry, I would say, at this moment in time. Like I've said a couple of times about the TVL figures and things are bandied around like the top level metric these days. But there's so much more to it, I think, and we're at a really interesting time as well. So how can your average guy, girl get involved with Optimism Dapps? Like, what do they need to do? Can we use MetaMask? Is there a specific wallet we have to get involved with? Like, what do I have to jump over here, or can I just hop on using MetaMask?
Yeah, you can definitely just hop on using MetaMask. Like I mentioned, it's super easy to just transport from Optimism or from Ethereum mainnet to
Mhm.
Optimism. And maybe I'll drop a little bit of alpha here since
Yeah.
I guess we don't actually give too much alpha publicly.
Mhm.
But yeah, the first thing you would do is you would use our bridge, and the bit of alpha is that we're actually releasing a new experience this week, maybe early next week actually. But the experience would
Careful
allow,
now, Smith. Careful.
yeah, I don't want to make promises, but it's coming out really soon. And what it'll do is it'll allow you to onboard onto Optimism via any ecosystem. So if you're on AVAX, Polygon, Arbitrum, Binance Smart Chain, you can easily onboard onto Optimism now.
Nice.
If you had a credit card or something, you can also easily onboard onto Optimism. And if you're coming from Coinbase, Binance, any sort of like centralized exchanges, you can also easily onboard onto Optimism. So yeah, we're trying to make the friction very low. So you would first start there to bring your money onto Optimism. So that would kind of sit in your MetaMask over a different network.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the apps that you can use right now, yeah, you can basically go to our ecosystem page on our website.
Mhm.
It'll have a ton of the apps that you can use. And then if you wanted a more DeFi encompassing one, you would probably go to like DeFi Llama, and it'll tell you the TVLs and sort of like the experience and success of some of those dApps. So yeah, I would start over there. And then as time goes on, a lot of our first announcements come out on Twitter. So, for example, the VDAO solidly fork announcement came out on Twitter. So you can definitely keep tabs on our new stuff coming out via Twitter.
Okay, cool. So Twitter's the place. Do you guys have a Discord channel, or do you stay out of Discord?
Oh, we do have a Discord channel, and yeah, definitely come check us out. A lot of people talk in there, so it might get a little overwhelming sometimes, but it's a sign of a very active community. So yeah, definitely come check us out. We've done a lot to cultivate this, and a lot of us at the actual company respond very quickly in Discord, um, since it's pretty
Yeah.
fun for a lot of people over at Optimism. So you'll see like Kelvin hop into Discord a lot. You'll see V, our community lead. She's always on Discord as well.
Nice.
A lot of people are very active, so you can definitely chat with us
So you can
there.
have a proper conversation with the people that know what they're talking about. That's awesome. And I just want to add as well, in terms of
Exactly.
tracking Optimism Dapps, yeah, you've got DeFi Llama and your site, but you've also got DappRadar. So that's the place where you can find the entire list of Optimism dApps and all the different categories, keeping it a bit more general there. So, Smith, I want to ask you a bit of a philosophical question, and feel free to tell me to shut up. But how do you see this year playing out in regards to the sort of regulations in DeFi that we're seeing and the kind of ramping up of institutional money, and what I see as a bit of a shift across, like the players perhaps that we weren't too bothered about getting involved here seem to be getting involved? Bit of a big question, but how do you see it playing out right now? Like, there's a lot of fear mongering going on. Do you think it would just be the same as last year when we had the same kind of news coming? What's in your head on this right now? In regards to as well, like how easy will it be for people to get involved? And do you think it will become more appealing, or do you think this is going to scare them away?
I think regulation is net positive for crypto. To have a larger narrative and change the world, we do need regulation because we need a lot of parties to sort of buy in. So I think it's net positive. And the landscape is always constantly changing. And we have some of the largest figureheads on the forefront of regulation, making sure that they're pushing forward crypto, DeFi, and whatnot. So I think it's
Yeah.
very good. It's evolving very quickly, and you can kind of see that with releases like the Bitcoin ETF and
Yeah.
sort of things like that that are actually were shot down so quickly
Yeah.
last year are now coming to light now, and that sort of acceptance is super crucial to going towards the inevitable reality.
Hmm.
So I think yeah, we're going to a very exciting time, an exciting place. Taxes are getting better in crypto because they were absolutely terrible this year. So
Yeah.
excited to see that evolve as well, and people not to be as scared about doing crypto specific activity because
Yeah.
taxes and things like that. But yeah, regulation is good. I'm actually excited
I'm
about it.
with you, man. I'm with you. You can't have a Wild West. Like it's good for some while it's bad for others. And if we want to go places and get bigger, it has to be regulated. I'm really with you there. I like to kind of ask people that just to see how they feel about it overall, and how if it will stifle innovation or anything like that. I actually don't. I think we'll just keep going forward as we've been going forward, but with some tighter rules and regs, like you say, taxes and people, maybe even better tools for people to jump in rather than scaring them off. We just provide better tools. So I think that's the kind of key to it as well, isn't it? Right, my
Exactly.
man. We have come to the end of our session. So I just want to thank you so much. You've been really cool. It's been great to learn more about optimism for me as well. I wouldn't say I was the most clued up on the whole thing, but now I have a much clearer idea of what everything is there. And I think it's important that people listening keep an eye on the Optimism DApp ecosystem in a big way, because it sounds like there's some interesting things happening here this year. So finally, Smith, do you want to give a shout out to any of the kind of you've said about Twitter? Have you got a blog or anything else where people should, stay connected, and where they can kind of reach out to you? And also, there might be people out there who are interested in kind of being ambassadors for Optimism. Is there any way they can reach to you in an easy way?
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you want to, first of all, reach out to the optimism community. Like I
Mhm.
said, Discord is a very active community there. A lot of our ambassadors that are interested in participating in helping out the ecosystem and growing, they all kind of started there. So that would be like the very entry point.
Mhm.
You can definitely follow us on our socials, mainly Twitter, at Optimism, um, Optimism PPC, I believe. So go check us out on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter as well. Um, so yeah, definitely check us out for news. We release like I said, the earliest bit of alpha comes out on Twitter. All of our co-marketing sort of goes on Twitter as well. So you
Okay.
see really like the latest things happening there. So um, yeah, Discord and Twitter.
Discord and Twitter. Cool. All right, man. Thank you so much for your time today, Smith. I really appreciate that. And I hope that we get to sit down again in the future and talk about some more exciting things, and whatever else is happening on the network as well, because we both know that things move super fast. So in another 6 months, we could be having a totally different conversation. But yeah, thank you again. Thank you for summing up all the answers really well. I hope everybody's really like got to grips with optimism and what it is today, and is getting a bit more excited about that. So thank you again, man. It's been really cool. And before we wrap up, I just want to give another shout to this community call that we have tomorrow. So that's our first community call, DappRadar community call. Schmidt, have you ever done a community call? Do you guys do community calls at all over at Optimism?
We do actually. So yeah, once again, Discord is has our events posted. So
Cool.
our community lead tends to do a lot of one-on-one calls with people in our community, whether it's helping them with developers, developer resourcing, or even just answering questions. So it's an exciting time.
Nice, nice, nice. Yeah, it's kind of a scary prospect, you know, like it's the first one that we're doing. I mean, we have no problem answering all these questions and helping people. That's what we're there for. Just wondering how it will all roll out. So obviously, as I said at the beginning, it didn't roll out that well the other day. Thanks, Discord. You really kind of did us over there. But yeah, we're going to try it again tomorrow, 3 p.m. UTC. Now, given that everything's been cool today on this call, hopefully everything will be cool tomorrow. So yeah, 14th of April, 3 p.m. UTC here on Discord. We've got CDO Dragos Danica, CEO Skamantas Danauskis, and Head of Product Nick Renning. All will be on hand to answer all questions about everything DappRadar, and we'll be specifically talking about the unclaimed radar airdrop, some product updates, pro features, and our forthcoming mobile app, and we're going to introduce our bounties. So should be pretty good and should be pretty fun as long as Discord doesn't screw us over again. So again, thanks for me. Thank you, Schmidt. Thank you everybody for listening and joining in, and I hope you all learned something today. Take care, everybody. See you soon.